Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a really exciting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Renegade Provisions Co. or Renegade EDC Gungnir. What does that mean, Gungnir? The only reason I feel completely and totally confident about saying what that is because the symbol matches up with what I found on Google, which is the symbol for Gungnir, which is Odin's spear. It's the Norse word for the great Odin, the Norse god, right? His spear, which is super epic. I love stuff like that, and I think this is really appropriately named because this thing is a titan, an incredibly well-made titan of a knife. Really cool. Just wanted to add that in there. I hope by the time you guys are seeing this that the pre-orders are still available for this. I will link this right down below. As details on this note that was included with the knife, this was sent to me by Renegade EDC, is that they are expected to ship in December. So I'm hoping if you guys want to check this out that the pre-orders are still available. Thank you so much to Renegade EDC for sending this in for review. And thanks to my generous patrons who are supporting me right now. There's a link for Patreon right down below. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Who's this made by? It's made by Riot. So there you go. Now you know. Let's go ahead and measure it. Holy moly, this thing is huge. Ew, get out of here. Overall length of the Gungnir, which I believe I'm pronouncing correctly, is about 9.4 inches overall. Blade length is 4 1/4, and the cutting edge is about 3.85. Not a small knife. Let me emphasize that. This is amongst the larger folding knives I have reviewed on this channel. Up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and the Ontario Rat Model 2, you can see here, yeah, it's titanic. It's huge. The Rat 1 being 8.5 inches overall, and what I'd consider to be a full-size knife, right, or a large knife. Yeah, definitely bigger there. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3? Yeah, big, right? Do we need to do another size comparison? I think we will anyway for tradition's sake. The Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and the Benchmade Bug Out. So there you go. It's a freaking huge knife. Let's go ahead and do carry profile up against the Spyderco Para 3. Thickness of the Gungnir up against the Spyderco Para 3. Now, these are contoured, so it is slightly, even though it looks identical, it is slightly thicker. It's not as thick as you might think for being such a huge knife. I mean, it's very large, very long this way, and very, very tall, but the overall thickness isn't crazy. It's these carried, it's this part of the carry dimensions that's going to give you an example of some problems you might have while you're carrying it. PM2 and Para 3, yeah, way longer, way taller. Absolutely. So this is a big knife, right? For people who enjoy carrying large knives, you're probably going to like this. If you don't like carrying large knives, you're probably not going to like this. It's as simple as that. Materials, what are we looking at here? We are looking at, in this case, M390 titanium and micarta. There's a few different, couple of different configurations you can get, including 2 different pocket clips. There's a wire clip and a titanium, a milled titanium pocket clip. Those clips are not interchangeable, so you pick one and you stick with that. So yeah, nice materials for sure. Let's go ahead and weigh it real quick. This is big, definitely, and there's not any excess milling or anything like that. This is 7 ounces. So yeah. What do you want to look at it? Like ratios or whatever. I think it's most easily put. This is just a big object. It's a heavy object. It's a wide object. This is something that you're going to, you know, if you're going to be comfortable carrying this, is probably going to be in heavy duty pants or jeans, right? And you're, you know, maybe you work outside, or you just, if you're used to carrying larger knives, right? For everybody else, it's probably just going to be a little bit uncomfortable to carry. And I'll be the first to admit, as somebody who does like to carry larger knives, it's a little bit outside of my comfort zone, right? This is up in the, you know, like the Kaiser XL sheepdog territory of knives. But there definitely is some, there's a novelty fun element here. Just carrying something that is probably going to be overkill for a lot of people, but it's fun, and I like stuff like this. This is the kind of thing that knives like this are fun to review. It gives me a lot to talk about, and I'll tell you right now, this knife puts a huge smile on my face. Whether or not it's practical for me to carry, if I owned this, which I don't, this will be going back to them, I would carry this periodically just for fun, even if I don't need it, just because it's just one of those things that if you're a knife guy and you like large knives, it's going to put a smile on your face, right? Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. Get out my tools as per usual. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the description in the section that talks about my tools. So all of the screws that you can see on the exterior, pivot and the screws for the scales right here, these are all T8 screws, even the ones for the pocket clip. And also the one for the lock bar insert. There are 2 screws underneath holding in the backspacer, and they're T6, and I know that because I have already been into it. We'll talk about that here in a second. It also has a captive pivot, which I'm really happy to see. This was very easy to disassemble. So, anyways, what else do we need to do? Oh, we need to measure blade stock thickness. I don't think the blade is incredibly thick. You know, considering how big this knife is, you might expect generally the bigger the knife is, the thicker the blade stock, but it's not crazy. We're looking at 150 thousandths, which is like old school ZT thickness. That's about what I'd think there, right? The edge, the blade is very tall, and there's an aggressive hollow grind. So let me emphasize this, guys. This edge is thin, and while slicing a piece of paper doesn't really prove anything, you can feel it. You can feel how easily this thing goes through paper. And sorry, I cut the edge there because, or I caught the edge there because there's an area. This is a prototype. It's been handled and used by some other people, so there's probably a spot in the edge where it's gonna get caught, but this is slicing through paper like nothing, and it's because of how thin the edge actually is. Sorry, let's get back up here. I want to give you guys a good example of, yeah. So, even being used, right, if I can show you here, it's a pretty aggressive hollow grind. I'm sure just, honestly, a couple of strops and we could get that little roll out of there. But take my word for it. You don't have to. Take my word for it. That edge is super duper thin for how big and, you know, relatively thick the spine is. All right, moving on here. This is a flipper, and it flips. There is a lot of weight and mass flying out of the handle here. You pull down on the flipper tab, and it's going to deploy. It also makes a cool little kind of ting noise sometimes. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to hear it, but yeah, can you hear it coming back down? There's something in there that's causing it to reverberate a little bit, but it sounds cool. It doesn't sound crappy or like it's low quality or anything like that. No, it sounds really cool. This is a fun knife to deploy, and it is crazy smooth. Partially because the blade is just so big, but also because this is a Riot made knife, and they tend to know what they're doing when it comes to action. You can flip this all day and disengage it all day. Your hands are not going to tire out. It's just fun. It's not raised higher, like the cutout for the lock bar. The lock bar itself is not raised higher, but there is a nice cutout right here, so you can still approach it the way that you want to, and there's no double clutch. So there we go. We got that little ting. It's nice. It's cool. I like it. The flipper tab is not gigantic. It's about the right shape and size considering the detent, right? And the detent is a good medium to medium heavy, right? Nice click there. That's where the, listen. I don't know. I just like that. Nice and knocked down at the corners. Nothing sharp there. In fact, speaking of not being sharp, this is a super comfortable knife. We have a pretty straightforward handle that is, you know, robust enough that it fills out the hand, but it's also tall, right, and contoured. The edges are knocked down. This is very comfortable. As in combination with the clip, which is flat, it's a little bit of a point there at the edge, but because it's flat, it really doesn't bother you. You can choke back. I mean, if you want to get all the way back here, you're still getting a full 4-finger grip. If you want to do some chopping with it, I guess. I don't think that's what you should be doing with a pocket knife. But if you find yourself in that scenario, you've got a hand position for it, right? You can choke up. This area right here, you might be able to get one knuckle into for a, you know, like if you really want to choke up behind the blade. And there is a position, I like it when they put the jimping up here. So if you really want to do some detail work, your thumb has the appropriate traction point on the blade for that. So that's cool. I really like that. The blade is awesome. I really wish that they had done a tumbled finish. I'm sure that would have cost them more. For those of you, you know, at this point in the review, you're like, I already went and looked at it and it's so expensive. Riot does this for this much and all these companies do this. So when, you know, somebody like Renegade EDC wants to do these through Riot, right? The knives cost them less the more that they're able to order, right? But ordering more costs more and more and more money. So it's like if somebody's able to order 1,000 of a knife, you know, through Riot, then they have it costs them less. Like Riot charges them less for the batch, and then they can move some of those savings onto the end users. I'm gonna guess that this was not a large batch. Right, as I've learned from talking with other people who, you know, take a design and they take it to Riot, right? They probably didn't order a whole bunch, so it was probably pretty expensive. So yeah, there are going to be models out there that are going to compete better for materials, even made by the same companies, right? But it's not an equal playing field, right? Not everybody can afford to order 500 knives or 1,000 knives from Riot. Or a company like that. So this is an expensive knife, but I just want people to keep that in mind. That's kind of an element that you can't just work around, right? But that being said, they are still delivering some pretty serious quality, and you are getting a lot of knife. As much as I always say, like, oh, don't look at it like big knives cost big knife, big money, small knife, small money. It's not like that, right? But you do get that kind of, you know, that serotonin release of the mind, right? If you're like me and like it's a big knife and you're like, oh yeah, I can feel the value in that sucker, right? Yeah, it's there, right? We can't help but think more knife equals more money, right? So at least you do have that satisfaction there. But I want to point that out, right? If you're thinking, you know, wow, it's expensive. Anyways, fit and finish all the way around is exactly what you'd expect from Riot. It's perfect. There are zero flaws in the seating of the hardware, the construction of this, everything. It's absolutely perfect, and it just looks fantastic. The blade, I would have preferred a tumbled finish. I would imagine if they do stuff like that and they crown the spine, like stuff that I always like to see, that's going to cost more money, right? I feel like Riot's premium tumbled finish, where it's like polished and then tumbled, I'm going to guess that costs more money than doing a belt satin finish, right? So, okay, I would have preferred it, but this looks fine. We have the satin flats, which might be hand rubbed, I'm not really sure. And then we have the machine part of the finish down here. We have an enormous flat that carries out to about 85% the total length of the blade. We have a nice swedge up here. This is a really aggressive looking sheep's foot blade, and there's a lot of material. And because there's slight belly, right, enough for slicing, but you can definitely still do your draw cuts and things like that. It's just a really cool looking blade. And if you're wondering, can you get at that fuller to reverse flick it? Yeah, kind of. It's not quite deep enough. You can kind of just use the meat of your finger and give it a little bit of wrist and get it, right? Or you can pinch open it, right? That'll work just fine. Some of you guys might be better at it than me. I'm not quite perfect, but the flipper tab works exactly the way that it's supposed to with no wrist. Either way, it's fun to deploy. And like I said, it gets stupidly thin down there. I'll show you guys the taper at the tip. That's definitely a wild grind for sure. The micarta looks great. I really like how this looks. There is a lanyard hole back here for lanyard people, so that's nice. And this is titanium. The pocket clip, I think probably, you know, the pocket clip itself is not a small clip. The reason it looks so skinny is because the rest of this knife is so massive. So I think if it were me, I would probably go for the wire clip. I think this looks better. I think the wire clip is probably going to create a better carry experience for a lot of people. This does not carry shallow if you think about how much knife is actually in your pocket, but there's a decent amount of knife sticking up out of your pocket. I think the wire clip's going to carry a little bit deeper. I like minimizing the amount. It's not about like, oh, the tactical draw, you know, I can pull it out quick so I can, yeah, ninja bears attacking me in the, you know, parking lot of the grocery store. No, I don't care about that. I want as much of the knife in my pocket as possible. So this carries all right. I think the wire clip's going to carry a little bit better. But both clips look great, and neither of them, I think, will be hotspots. There is a continuous ramp right here, and it is riding on a pretty smooth, contoured surface. So in and out of the pocket, honestly, it's pretty easy. This is a nice titanium bolster lock, which is great because, I mean, you do have a lot of area back here to rest your fingers. You can kind of, I mean, it's nice and wide and tall. Even if it was a fully exposed frame lock, I don't think you'd have an issue with this. But the nice thing about locks like this is that most of the lock is not exposed. It's underneath this scale here, so you can pretty much put your fingers wherever as long as it's not right there on the lock, and you're not going to create any unnecessary pressure that would slow the blade down or stop it from flipping out. So that's nice. This side is much the same as the front, except for the pocket clip, and this is the lock side. Right-handed only, so sorry lefties, there's no manning position for the pocket clip on the left-handed side. There is a lock bar insert that I think probably also doubles as an additional, maybe not, it might, no, I can see in there, it does. It doubles as an additional over travel stop, which is fine. The scale's going to do that as well. But either way, that's nice. No lock stick or anything like that. And let me make sure and get it fully locked out. Yeah, no blade play up, down, left, or right. I don't think I've ever really experienced a Riat knife that has issues with lockup. I mean, the geometry looks really, really good. Engagement is something like 35% or so. The stop pin is internal, and it actually follows the blade. So it acts, you know, like external stops bracing on the frame. It's doing the same thing. It's just internal. So that's nice. I always like to see that. The reason that I took it apart is because the blade was not initially centered, but I knew this is a Riat knife. The tolerances are good. It's likely just needing some adjustment, and maybe it came off-centered because I think 2, 3, 4 reviewers have taken a look at this before me. They've obviously used it. Maybe some of them adjusted it to get it to their action preferences or whatever. So I thought, well, it's probably just something that needs to be adjusted. So I took the scale off, which is how I found out that the screws underneath are T6. And then I pulled the pivot back a little bit. And I did my paper trick, which there's a video on how to center a blade if you're not aware. And as I expected, it centered up perfectly with perfect action. And there's no detent lash or anything like that. There's no pivot lash on this knife. Everything is the way that it should be because it is a Riat knife. So what does this thing cost? For those of you who didn't go look at the link, this is a $425 knife. Ooh, wow, that's expensive, right? Riat usually does stuff like that for around $350, $375. Right. But a lot of times, not all the time, a lot of the time, you might be looking at a knife that was ordered in a much larger batch. So there were savings there that the designer or the production team or whoever passed on to the people who were buying it. This knife is larger, so there is a slightly additional cost in, right? It's like going against the whole, like I always make fun of people for thinking big knife, big money. Probably a little bit more for the cost of materials considering how big the blade is, how big the knife is overall, not that much more. So it's expensive, sure. There are a lot of great knives out there for 425 bucks, right? Now you are getting great materials here. You're getting titanium, you're getting a nice micarta, you're getting M390, right? You're getting what you want in this territory, and you're getting a lot of it. You're also getting a well-made knife that is absolutely suited for continuous cutting, right? This is a great cutting tool. This is a knife that's going to absolutely serve the end user well. I don't know, this is a prototype. I don't know if they actually are all going to come with these cases, but this one came with a little Pelican case, which doesn't necessarily, add a whole lot of value there, but it's nice, right? It's a nice case for sure. Yeah, you can get a Hinder knife for 425 bucks. For 50 bucks more, you can get a Chris Reeve knife, right? Those knives are using similar materials, but are made in the United States. So it depends on where you put your value. Is this knife made well? Yes. Is it using premium materials that you can expect to see at the same price point? Yes. Is it slightly higher than other knives that are made with the exact same materials and are also not being made in the United States? It's definitely a little bit higher, right? But I get it. I mean, I understand, right? I'm guessing they didn't order a ton of these, right? So if you like large knives, if you appreciate Riat's quality and you like the materials here, this looks like something that is appealing to you, right? If you do decide to spend that money, you're gonna be happy with this knife. If you don't like large knives, you don't like knives that are not made in the United States, right? or, you know, you put value into, you know, if you're putting heavy emphasis on knives that are using the same materials for less money, right? It's just going to be one of those things where some people are going to see value in it and some people are not. That being said, even if the price was perfectly spot on, this knife just isn't going to be for everybody because it is so massive, right? This is not a knife that I'm going to openly recommend for the vast majority of people because it's so huge. It's obviously meant for people who want larger knives. It's not like he sat down and was like, I'm going to make a knife for everybody and make it gigantic. No, I think they knew exactly what they were doing. They were making a big premium knife for people who like big premium knives. So if you like that kind of stuff, you're probably going to see a lot more value in this. If you don't, then you probably won't, right? The people who decide to pick this up, I think, will be very happy with it. It is a very well-made item, high quality, and it's going to put a smile on your face, especially if you do like larger knives. It's just satisfying. This is a satisfying knife. And like they called it the Gungnir. I was not aware that that was the name of Odin's spear, but that's cool in and of itself. And I think that this knife does that word justice. This is pretty big and epic and, you know, intense and intimidating and all that fun stuff, right? Obviously not. I don't find joy in intimidating people, but the knife itself has an intimidating aesthetic. So for the person who buys it, recognizing that element just for the joy that it brings them, I think, you know, thumbs up. This is cool. I like this. Not going to go on my most recommended knives playlist because, again, that playlist is generally reserved for people, you know, for knives that I can openly say, like, I think the majority of the people watching will, you know, that I can recommend it to them. But I do definitely like this knife. I want to make that clear. So check out the pre-order if you're big into large premium knives. I think this is definitely a winner. Check out the pre-order link. I hope it's still available. I'm sorry if it's not. I'd like to see more. In fact, I'm going to be keeping my eyes open for new stuff from Renegade EDC in the future because this is very, very cool. Thank you again for sending this in, Renegade EDC, so that I could take a look at it. This was a fun one, and knives like this always make what I do just way more fun. It's just, you know, this is a much more interesting knife to take a look at. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.